on the YouTube channel. He has a MDAA YouTube channel. Roundtable discussion. He has a he has an opening monologue, you might say, and it explains a lot, and it charges the audience, charges everyone with where they're going and what they need to be talking about. So I'm going to encourage him to do that today.
Okay.
Riki Ellison.
Good. Defense wins world championships, and you're seeing that today. And the defense that's in place has come from here. You're the heartbeat. And we are grateful for what Huntsville, Alabama has done over the past 30 years to be able to defend 13 nations, 170.5 million people. Your systems are defending that. Without that, this would not be a war. We would not be able to do what, and millions of people would be dead. So there is a lot to be thankful for on the legacy systems that are out there today doing what you designed it to do and the engineering of what took place to make that happen. And as we know, one of ours, there is sacrifice. And I just want to reach out and recognize Sergeant Benjamin Pendleton, with day one, Air Defense SMDC Commander Saudi, gave the ultimate sacrifice for the defense of those 170 million people. I'm Riki Ellison. I have a love affair with Alabama a little bit.
It's a love-hate relationship, though.
I first came to Alabama on September 23rd, 1978, and played on Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama, against Bear Bryant and the #1 team in the country, and came from a University of Southern California, which was a different culture than Bear Bryant's culture. To say the least, right? We were not the Junction boys in suits and ties and all that. We were undisciplined off the field, hippie-ish, all of that. But we brought a beating to him, and we won the national championship that year. But Bear Bryant and Alabama have a relationship of change of culture with USC. Years earlier, Bear Bryant had an all-white football team in 1970. Came out and played USC. We had an integrated team, and we beat them badly. And the next year, he started the integration on it. I'm saying to you in this community, you have to change your culture. Just like Nick Saban did, because you're not going to win with the culture you've got today. You have to change it. And that's already in motion. The Secretary of War, before this war happened, this administration is forcing change to bring in innovation rapidly and to give what the warfighters want in the field. The days of being fat and happy for 25, 30 years with a limited opponent and doing risk-adverse oversight bureaucracy is done. You cannot win that way anymore. We are playing against China, against Russia. And for the reality of losing 4 Tippy-2 radars, 4 THAAD systems that are about $1 billion apiece, by $20,000 drones. That, the revolution has happened. I highly doubt that we'll end up ever having set radars like that that are not mobile. Those days are over. And the issue I have, a lot of us have, with this community, not with this community, because you're not to blame here. It's the requirement guys in the building that are to blame. And they have to be held accountable for a loss of that magnitude. And that loss is not only the ability to coordinate THAAD and MSC missiles under attack, but it's early warning that's gone from 7 minutes to no minutes. And if you cannot defend a fixed site radar, why would you replace that? Why would you even build any more? This is the reality of what we're fighting right now. And Russia and China are giving Iran targeting information, intel, on how to beat our systems. So, 2 years ago, because innovation is it, we've watched 3 years of Ukraine crush it in innovation and implementation of rapid technologies that are proven, that are deployed from a $5 50 cal bullet on an automated machine gun locked into acoustic sensors to take out Shihad 3s every day. Yet, we're too big, too smart, nothing else better is invented not here to take those lessons and to be able to do what they're doing. Why did we not do that? And I was there 2 years ago, and I took it right to the building, to R&D, to A&S, to our co-coms. And it went down the valley of death because either there's no cost margin in it, the majors were threatened, or we had something else better and promised, like we always do, a year out, 2 years out, but they didn't produce. They didn't produce. You have to be able to do a complete layered missile defense all the way down. And our gap, you can talk about Coyote, Roadrunner, and all that, but when you are attacked by 700 Shihad drones, that ammo goes out quick. This community has to change to be able to put small innovation, quick innovation. Dude, that's happening. That's happening. I'm not saying you can't stop it. You can't stop it. So I just got a little fired up about it because of that cost ratio of a $20,000 drone on a $300 to $500 radar that takes out the batteries. Okay, so anyways, let me just back off a little bit. And I think one of the best ways to communicate the overall situation with missile defense from Golden Dome all the way down to the war in Iran is I like to go through what I've done in the last 4 weeks. I haven't been home since March 14th. February 13th, 14th. It's a month. So I started on February 12th with my 19th visit to the White House on the Golden Dome. So I'm the trusted, independent agent for the NSC, for the White House, in between the building and them. I'm also trusted on the other side as well. So I've been in the White House discussing the Golden Dome and selecting the Golden Dome, as you know, Joe, and we had the entire Golden Dome team for the Breakfast of Champions.
Indeed.
In April. But that to keep in check the deep state that we have fighting that. You gotta understand, there's a lot of people that don't like the Golden Dome, that don't want the Golden Dome in both authorities, especially in authorities. So that's been a constant inside game fight. And we came up with the Schriever, the Oppenheimer person to put it there, and Mike's the guy. So we've been shepherding that and pushing aggressively on stuff that they can't do. And on the 13th, I sent a memo. We created a memo for the Gold Rush, which is breaking out in the innovation to set led by the R&E, led by the led by the Secretary of War, to come out and open up that revolution to our industry, award, the contracts, and do a regional campaign around this country in that innovation aspect. So that memo was sent. I flexed it with a lot of people. That was on the 13th. On the 14th, I met with your Congress with the head of the caucus, the Golden Dome caucus, which is not. There's no Democrats on the caucus, and there's no way that caucus has any power to survive. Golden Dome's got to survive no matter what the party is, no matter what the next president is. And that caucus is neutered. Until you get some Democrats on that caucus, it's a self-licking ice cream. And so they came to me, and we are now, when I get home, we'll be going after and getting some Democrats on that caucus. And I think we've got obviously some great cases. I flew from there, from Washington, D.C. to Brussels, Belgium, where I was hosted by the Netherlands ambassador with 12 NATO nations and their representatives for 2 hours. And there were no U.S. representatives. And I had to put forth the Eastern Flank Deterrent Line, which we created, which is a sensor line, C2 line, effector line from Norway all the way down through Turkey. That's the concept. That's been led by Landwehr, USAFE. But they needed independent to put forward and introduce that in a way of what they want contributed. So each of those I made the ask for each of those nations to provide a cloud and to provide a data processing data center in their country to absorb the supercomputer cost and compute power. That's the cost of entry to create nobody's done this, as this is not a bilateral C2, this is open C2, non-classified data moving. And we're at a stage now where we can use open software, no latency, on the edge fabric to be able to do fire control decisions off of that. That's real, and it's not a legacy system. It's not a brown field. It is a green field system that's being developed over there. The next day I went to Wiesbaden and met with the CTO of putting this whole architecture together and putting a new internet, you could call it, a new way to communicate with non-class to each of those 9 nations, and they can process, just like we can, process it up through and filter it up, put it into their secret capabilities. Concept is to be able to do an exercise, I think it would be about 60 million, maybe 100 million, 50 million from us and 50 million from the allies, and to be able to leave capabilities. They can have their own, we don't care what they are, at each of those countries and hook it in. So it's a process, it's a coalition of the willing over there. It's not NATO, we're not gonna wait for the wine drinkers, we're not. We're going with the vodka drinkers on the line to get it done, and it has to be done, especially what's going on in the world today. You better have it. You better have layered missile defense. Those days are done, the arguments are over. That every nation that's threatened has to have what you guys are creating. Has to happen. It's coming. It's here. So after that meeting, I got a chance to go down to Würzburg and met with our most innovative ADA battalion under the 52nd Brigade with the Strikers. And we have a Thai battery that's doing all the innovation from here with sensors, with cheek shooters, with all that stuff is being done through fly trap exercises, which we were part of in December in Germany and in Poland. So that was fascinating to see where we're at with the maneuvering force and that movement that's happening. And a lot of that is going to be moved now into it's got to come, and it's coming, it's here. You're not separating air defense from offense anymore. I mean, it's one fires. It's going to be, you'll see the organization of the U.S. Army addressing that part of it. It was awesome to see those troops. We had about 300 of them, or 400 or 500 of them. I told them right there in Germany that 81 years ago, the U.S. Army, the United States, won the world championship right there in Germany. And right there, they had corridors that air defense made happen. Patton couldn't have done it without air defense along those columns to get into Germany. They won the world championship. We won it. And here we are today going for another world championship, because that's up right now. You can look at that is a world championship game right now. And we still don't have air defense for our maneuvering force. Is that ridiculous? You cannot maneuver our forces because we don't have a capable counter-UAS defense to maneuver with those forces. That hasn't happened. Still waiting for Army on the IFPIC. Shit, that was 2012 requirements. What have we been doing? So there's a lot of frustration, and the reality is the reality. You can't hide from the truth. So our Army's doing everything they can to get that together, to have an ability to fight the maneuvering force, but more importantly is that ability to have sensor capability to track down shihads before they even cross the border. You gotta be able to do this. can't do that, you can't defend anything. You have to have layers all the way down through it. And for R&E to be chasing class 1s and class 2s, they don't do anything. It's unbelievable what we did there. And ignored that she had 3 capabilities. So after that, I flew to Denver, Colorado, and I had a chance. I was at the AFA conference, but certainly had the opportunity, and I think the best acquisition general in our force, in our joint force. That's Dale White. That was put up also for the Golden Dome. And we had the Secretary, Dr. Minnick of the Air Force. We had Salty. We had Wilsbach. We had the Corps of Space and Missile Defense. But their message was not about technologies. They're not. You got them. You got the technology. It was about culture. Coming right back down to it, about culture. That has to be changed. That's your top generals speaking to you, to the community, that our culture is not good enough and that we have to change our culture. Then I had the opportunity after that to go down to Colorado Springs, met with COCOM, on Friday, the day of the strikes, and had discussions with how important layered missile defense is. He doesn't have layered missile defense in the homeland U.S. We don't have it. You understand that? And they're working with Mike, with Heath, with Sean, with Brian, to be able to get layered defensive capability. Then you saw what happened that Friday night. And what it did to change the priority and the urgency for the defense of this country and for Golden Dome. Golden Dome was predominantly space-based. After you saw what we saw, we all saw. Better be shifting a little bit to that underlayer, limited area defense capabilities. So I think you're seeing a shift to be able to get that terminal capabilities in place at a layered level, and that's got to be done by 28. That's moving. But on that Friday night, one of the coolest things we do also is we recognize the best of the best in our warfighters for NORTHCOM and NORAD. So we were able to have our, I think, 94th or something, Missile Defender of the Year, and recognized, and a lot of those were on Mike's team and Gooey's team. Golden Dome requirements guys, the best we've got to do that. That's culture. We try to do our part in recognizing greatness, not over rank, over people and leadership and skills. We do that. That's culture. And we recognized 20 of them that were there that night, and Canada. And one of the things I've been doing also is trying to bring in the global Golden Dome, which is in the executive order in the second part. We're going to get there, but if you can't do it with Canada, if you can't play with Canada, you can't play with anybody. So we're working that. We did a virtual with the committee, the head Space and Air Force, Major General Smitty, last week, to get their issues out and what they can provide, because it's going to be pay to play. You can't use that word, but you better be able to contribute to be part of this. And it is data being able to be shared across everywhere. And that's one of the things Mike's doing with the consortium on the C2. But that C2 right now is collecting and meshing all the current C2s, legacy C2s, all that stuff into a dashboard. They're not the engines. The damn engines are our biggest data providers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, because you can't do this without their expertise. They know data better than anybody except for China. And you have to bring them in, you have to do this to play that. So after Colorado, I went down to Tucson, Arizona, where we've got a border situation, where we finally got an ability to shoot down drones. How about that? It took a while. We got it, and we're shooting down drones on that border in designated areas where we're allowed to shoot down drones with whatever we got. We're doing that. But we have some tremendous issues with FAA and other agencies. We're not one team yet. And we got to build that. And we got to get rid of the cost of having a whole brigade of soldiers down there on the border. Technology's got to replace that. So we're working on that. And I've built 3 academic programs. I got another one at the University of Arizona that we are going after, that near space, border space to 80,000 feet to do what we've done at USC Shield and US Artemis at University of Hawaii. Create technical capstones to supplement and get in the field quicker than the processes that you guys are going through. So that's being done, linked into the lab. So we got that moving. Then I went there, from there, I'm just gonna finish my trip. Went there to Hawaii to meet with Indo-PACOM and sit down with PACAF and 94th, because the demand on their systems going back to the Middle East is obviously tremendous. And they've got to play with what they've got, but I highly doubt that we will move a system. We'll move ammo, but we ain't moving systems until we can defend our systems. There's no way you would do that. And they are adapting, and the U.S. Army's future air missile defense is being developed in Guam. And again, relocatable radars they're the same thing as fixed sites. Let's just be real clear that the warfighter does not want fixed site radars. Even though whatever they do right now, you got them until the war starts and they're gone. And then after that, we graduated my Artemis program, which I created 9 months ago with the University of Hawaii. We have 2 phenomenal capstones that are linked in with the lab that are being presented to JA tomorrow. So it was today, Friday, tomorrow, and they'll get funded. One is hyper boom. So hyper cheap makes noise, obviously, but the noise in the space they're in we don't hear it in human frequency, but there is disruption on the N wave that they're able to track and be able to disperse it on balloons, on buoys, on boats, like a cell phone. It's crazy. And this is going to happen because you need to have that early warning time, and that will feed into your C2 system. And the other one was swarming CubeSats with sensors, all sorts of sensors, cheap CubeSats, to be able to identify the vast Pacific, but it's going to be the whole. So that happened. And then after that, I went to San Francisco and met with, because obviously there's VCs all over this, but yeah, I had some discussions there and where I might host the Gold Rush. And then I came to Huntsville, and
Save the best for last.
so that's a lot right there. So I just want to give you a breadth on that. I can go into Golden Dome if you want. What
We
was?
will, we will.
Okay, so, all right.
We've got a few questions, and I have a question, but I'll let, Phil, you had a question in the mid-course here. Go right ahead, sir.
Riki, thanks for doing this. Phil Coker out of Hartford Group. You have twice told us that we need to change our culture, and I need a little help with that. 5 years ago, and oh, by the way, I'm not affiliated with Northrop Grumman. 5 years ago, Northrop Grumman built a mobile counter Shaheed system, offered it to the United States Army, they wouldn't buy it. Eventually, the Navy bought it to give to Ukraine. It's now in Odessa, keeping that port from being hit pretty successfully. But the U.S. Army still hasn't bought it and is not interested in it. Northrop spent bazillions of dollars. Their subs spent amazing amounts of money. The government would not give them a requirement, and even when they were buying it to give the Ukrainians, they wouldn't consider it. And they're still not considering it. What in our culture has to change where we don't go through that same kind of crap again?
Bill, expand on that a little bit. What do you see as the impediment to adoption of that by the U.S. Army?
Well, you don't know, you can't talk about the classified stuff, that what it
Right.
does. But there are plenty, I wouldn't go there, because there are plenty of innovations that are coming in that will compete with that, or probably much cheaper than what a big six can do, right? That's the part of the problem. It's trillions of dollars, and that's part of the problem.
It's a 2.75-inch rocket.
Okay.
Costs about $30K.
But we've heard this before, and it ends up being $200,000 2 years. I mean, I'm just being truthful with you. The promises have been made, and they are never on time, never even close to the cost that's recommended. So you got to be real here. They're tired of that. That's why you're not getting that part of it in. Okay, you've got a problem with projecting stuff that you can't back up, and you got a track record of that. So that's a culture you got to change, and you're scared to change it because you might get outbid or whatever because of all that. But that's got to change, and you got to figure out how to get that thing through, because those test ranges and stuff, I've been to them. It's not Ukraine. It's not rainy weather. It's not noises and all sorts of stuff. You can do everything perfect in white sands with no noise, no nothing. But it doesn't apply when you go out in combat. It simply doesn't. And so we've been riding this thing a little bit, and we'll be getting 97 PK. Why do we need 97 PK? Those days, again, you can't do that anymore because you can't afford the munitions at 97 point K. You have to drop that PK down to 80, to 70 to do that. But it's the deep state of the bureaucracy in R&E and A&S that have been there for 30 years, that are not going to take risk, that are in it for their career, not in it to win it. That's the truth. And so you have to have disruptors like we're getting with this president, even though people may not like him or whatever, and with the Secretary of War, and they have to disrupt that for you to be able to play, and your voices need to be heard. You're the ones not getting it unless you're going to keep. You're the ones that you have a voice. So I think it's coming. It has to come because they can't afford to shoot down $20,000 drones with $6 million bullets. They can't do that, but you have to do it because you have nothing else. So you're gonna Winchester the whole damn thing to save that one radar, and you don't save it. So that culture, there needs to be leadership. I think Mike Gookline has got that culture change. I think Frank's got that culture change. You got culture change, but we have to. It takes. We're not like the University of Indiana. We've got some. That's what we should be. That's pure culture there. He doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the talent, but he has culture, and that wins it all. That's what makes us great. That's what makes us world champions. That's how we won World War II. And that's what those poor guys are doing over there. Our soldiers over there, with all the stuff they've got, they're putting it all together, culture, to win. And we're doing a phenomenal job on medium range, short range integration on missiles. We are doing ridiculous stuff there, over there. That's improving our ability to fight. But the other side, studies this. They study exactly how our CRAM operates. They study exactly how the Patriots operate. They understand all that, and they feed it. But anyway, so culture change has to be done by leadership, but it's got to also be done bottom up.
Phil, did that
Thanks.
answer your question? Anyone else? Please.
What are they doing right now to try to defend?
Stand up, speak up, please.
What are they doing right now to try to defend against the cluster bombs coming off those warheads and hitting Israel?
Well, the best way
Left to launch.
is left to launch, right? The best way is to hit the launchers or the airports so they can't. We don't care about the munitions. We shouldn't, because they can't launch those munitions without those launchers. So that's the way we're doing it. It's a lot harder. We can do the medium range missiles that go to Israel because they're liquid. They're harder to, they're easier for us to take out. But the solid fuels in the short range hitting over UAE are a lot more challenging because they can ad-lib those things and put them anywhere. So that's what you saw, which was so cool about this war. Not wars are cool, but you saw the left of launch. I think it decimated at least 30% of the stuff before it even got out of that. And we have to do that now. We can't not just sit and be a point defense with no offense. And I think they're changing, everything's changing that way, especially my thoughts on the Golden Dome is that data doesn't know if it's defense or offense, and that data will be used globally for offensive fires and defensive fires. Why not? That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be able to pinpoint exactly where anything is launched from the world, and we'll be able to target that within seconds. That's what we're gonna do. That's called world championship. That's called world championship culture. That's what we're gonna do. But Golden Dome is a defensive system. I'm just speaking from Riki Ellison, not from anybody else.
Put on that culture discussion that you have, that we have, and how it relates to Golden Dome for America. Go to war with what you have, and we've got a PAE that has both legacy, very expensive, elegant systems, and I'm not talking about just Army. We've got carriers, we've got very expensive satellites, so we've got very expensive fixed wing basing that are all targets, legitimate targets. We happen to have had the Army forward basing that had very expensive assets that are under attack and have been destroyed in large, as you indicated with Tippy 2. But and those are expensive. They were moderately defended, if defended at all. And so the Navy has addressed that with its carrier battle groups. However,
They're moving.
They're moving,
They've got a
but they're still
CRAM and
they're
a
not
bunch of
moving very
weapon
fast.
systems. Yeah, but they've got layered
But
defense.
we got-
Joe, they're the best fighting machine we got.
They are.
They got layered defense from
They
ground
do.
to space.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it, but it's not on land. But that's an invincible force right now.
My point is that we have legacy systems, we have very elegant, expensive systems, and
We have to have them.
we have to have them. That's the point. That is a point. But we also we see that we neglected
They found the gap.
our underlay.
They found the gap.
And I want to focus on that underlay.
Yeah, they found the gap. We have not invested and implemented that gap, and they exploited it. That's what you're seeing today, right? We got hypersonics is another thing, but that lower gap either didn't want to take money from someone else or trade space it or ignored the problem, and that you can't do it anymore. That has to happen, else you can't do fixed defense side. And you got to look at that problem. So how about our little JLENs? How about X-band radars up in the air? How about something, and you're gonna have the sensor network. That's what Golden Dome is too, because you're gonna have to display that in 28 to be able to bring all those sensors that are not organic to the system to bear. And you've got to be able to take out all that, not all of it, but a lot of your smart missiles, that's the PK. That's the most expensive stuff on it. You gotta be able to feed that when it goes up instead of have it in it when it goes up. You gotta reduce the cost. You gotta create dumb missiles. That's where we're going. That is exactly where we're going. And we're gonna be putting them in containers, and you're gonna integrate all the missiles in those containers. And you're gonna link into mobile sensors that can, that's Golden Dome's job.
Questions, gentlemen? Yes, sir, right here.
Stephen Barracon, with all of this integration and everything, focus on C2 and communication and sensors, what's the concept of as far as next gen cyber defense? We're seeing what's happening in all the current operations and the large role that cyber plays to where we can get in undeterred in a lot of ways. So how's that going to impact Golden Dome?
Well, that's classified stuff there, but that is definitely part of Golden Dome. I'm part of cyber is in it. Josh Rudd, the new commander, was the DCOM. He's in charge of that. So yeah, cyber's, we can't talk about it, but it's certainly included in this. But cyber is not stopping those drones right now.
Yes, right here, sir.
So, that low layer point defense gap, is that, do you believe, I mean, now you're seeing it, and we're seeing it in operations, I mean, is that actually being recognized, and is there
Yeah.
gonna be resources to put towards it?
Well, they're moving stuff from Ukraine. Guess what they're doing? How about that? They're moving stuff they're experimenting with in Ukraine and going over there. That's what's happening.
In fact, Ukraine's going over there to help us.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So just thank you for what you do, this incredible lifetime that you put into this, and the energy, just the trip you just described. It seems to me, if you look at this layered missile defense under a Golden Dome, it's a whole nation thing to get after all these things at once. We talked about, initially, I heard some of your first speeches, 175 billion, we're gonna start with the space layer, take care of those other things you talked about. We knew there's gonna be vulnerabilities until we integrate those under layers. Defense of the homeland seems to be just primary mission. As someone who's retired military, if you can't get behind that, you said there's no Democrats on this caucus.
That was before the war happened, right? That was
Okay.
That was February 12th or 13th. We are now March 12th, 13th.
I guess my question is, what is the impediment to getting behind this? Is it a matter of, okay, what are we doing first? What's
For the Democrats,
with the Democrats?
that's President Trump. They can't stand him.
So they want to undermine us.
But there are states like Hawaii that are getting and have to get this stuff. There are states wherever we're going to put these Golden Dome sites are going to have delegations there.
But
So
when you
that's,
the point though is when you speak about, a culture change, you can't do it all good, fast, and cheap, right? So do we have to wait for these underlayers, or is that now become a higher priority, or is that an issue that we found?
that's probably the number one issue, because look at all the fixed targets we have in this country. How can you say you can defend those today?
Is that something General Gutlein is addressing right now?
Well, he's got class 3 and above. That's class 3, I believe. He's got it. I think class 3 and, well, I'm not sure, and I think class 2 and below are for sure GUIs, but Department of Homeland Security's got this too now. So there's a lot there. They're figuring out the authorities. This war is shaking. It's, again, that's changing everything.
But we're not gonna get funding for all.
You're gonna get funding for whenever they figure this thing out. They have to do this. You cannot. And as soon as a drone attack happens from Iran on our soil, could happen. It's coming. The priority's coming here.
There was a news report today about the warning to the West Coast, Los Angeles, about a shot-headed attack.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's.
Yeah, and we can't bitch about it, but why are we in this position? That's the bitch, when we knew this was happening 3 years ago and how Russia was taking off, why didn't we adjust to this? With capacity, with capability, why? And that's where I think you gotta root the problem out, because hold people accountable. They can't hide from that.
Ricky, that accountability falls back in the political spectrum as well, in that sense that our military leadership does what they're told
Right.
in large measure. We can research until the cows come home with whatever limited funds we have in the S&T world, and our industry can move out in terms of whatever they're seeing, in terms of their R&D programs and investments. But political will, and that is the loudest voice, the squeaky wheel, so to speak, that gets their ways, and that we've seen that, and that's the way we ran for 200 years. I don't know what it's going to take. 9/11, I thought was the signal.
This just happened. This is going to take that over. They're already moving in that. You've heard tech stuff. They're already scaling up. They're forcing the bigs to scale.
This has to transition to the next administration and the next administration. So for this, to have our nation's defense depend on political whims and views is an abomination. It's wrong. But we have what we have. We've got to change the political culture in order to get our.
I think this is agnostic because of what just happened here. It's agnostic. And if you don't defend this country from shot-heads, you're not in. You're on the outer edges of what's good for the American public. This is so powerful.
Well, you know, if that attack, if we have an attack on American soil,
Well, again, we should be prepared? We're not. Yeah, going back to who's
the
responsible for not
ramifications
doing
of that could be go either direction with finger pointing. And as I see this war
we don't need
unfold,
finger pointing more. We got to scale up. We got to figure out how to get you guys
there will be a
to
blame
be
game.
able to.
There will be a blame game.
I know, but after that, we got the more important thing is to get capability cheap fast into the. That's the game here.
Next question, right here, please.
This is Dr. Razik Yaqub. I'm Director of Cybersecurity and AI at RISE Foundation, Alabama A&M University. There is a discussion about cluster missiles and low-cost drones. My question is that the critical role is played by the GPS coordinates. So what stops us that when these weapons enter into a certain range, we just disrupt the GPS location, or we provide false GPS coordinate so that these weapons miss the target and they are rerouted to some other target?
I think they're doing some of that, but I think you got to look at the other ramifications of the non-military aspect of losing GPS for whatever that is, and military aspect for that one system. If you jam GPS, you jam a lot more dependencies on that GPS than just shooting that missile. But we're aware of electronic warfare has been phenomenal over there already with the E7s and so forth, and E3 and 3s. But you know, you got fiber optic drones, you got other things that are being developed, and in combat, fiber optic drones have no frequency, right? So that's whatever you're seeing. Yeah, they're on a cable, on a fishing line for 500 miles, and they drop it. So we've got to adjust to these threats. We got to be agile, quick, on top of it. And we're struggling with that. That's what I'm saying.
And our adversaries have read the GPS denied solution set too, and they've worked that problem over the many years and have answers to it in some measure, but that is being worked. We got another question right here, please.
Morning again, sir. Marty Omi with APT Research. We've been talking about going faster for some time. And the question that I've always had is, what did we give up? Probability kills one of them, but when you talk about ability, safety,
Risk.
quality, reliability, maintainability, you've got to give up something in there. What are we going to give up? How much are we going to give up? And how much that's going to put our own people at risk?
Safety is not being sacrificed in this, no.
But I think you're right. But you have to take risk in other areas.
Right.
Instead of, you're gonna have to do this, as you can't afford to do this quicker and cheaper. And that's the generals that don't go to war, that's the rated risk adversity and 100% everything. You're not gonna get that. That's life. That's the way you fight. So you're gonna have to give up something. They'll figure out what they're gonna give up on the trade space, but you got to. Else you can't do what we gotta do.
Sir.
How are you incentivizing that risk?
Would you speak up, let the audience hear?
Sorry. Systems engineer here. How are you incentivizing that risk out to the community? Right? You talked about the culture change, you talked about taking risks. I'm just curious, what's the plan to
I think the plan's going in
incentivize and get
place.
that going?
They're gonna fund you guys, the small businesses are being a big part of Golden Dome. They're not giving the big majors the big parts in the C2 thing. They're doing some deliberate things and forcing you guys to come up by that. It's refreshing to see they're moving the majors to be subs. They're trying this. We'll see what happens, right? You see that consortium, the majors are becoming subs to that. We'll see what happens on that. But I think they're incentivizing you the best they can. You're first at the line. You're first of the line. They're picking winners with you. That's the other thing, you know, that's risk taking, but they're risk because they got to go fast. They got to have something in the ground on 28, a lot. So they're going to take tremendous risk to get to that. He has no choice because that's deliverable. So you're incentivized by being first at the line and a prejudice or bias to you to do that. It's not the exotic stuff. Leave the exotic stuff out of it. It's not hypersonic strike or the next development of THAAD or Patriot. The Patriots are best ever in the history of the world. Interceptor for air, the best ever. They're not going to get rid of it. But that's the way. That's what they're asking for. That's what they want. They want to get that. We've failed at it with DIU in the Silicon Valley because we haven't been able to make it profitable for you guys to do that. And that, I think you've got a good deputy secretary, you got a good A&S secretary that understands the commercial market much better than we've ever had in there.
Riki, describe the relationship, if you would. You've been been a student of the Ukraine-Russia war for quite some time, for years now. And as we embark on the conflict or war in Iran, the effect, what is the relationship between those and Golden Dome for America? There's net benefit, and there's also, but let's talk about the benefits of.
Well, I think the driver for C2 and operational capability with non-classified information being shared amongst agencies or countries is coming from Ukraine and from that EFDL, because they can do it actively right now, where you're using older systems trying to you're using your own legacy systems from each of the services and bringing them all together, where they're starting with a brand new sheet of paper. So I think that's very effective on that.
Questions, gentlemen, please. Anyone? Right here.
The Ukrainians seem to be the ones that are best addressing this gap that you've identified, the drones
Right,
functionality.
and that's a layer. They've done it by doing layers out in front before anything crosses the border of tracking that, and then merging those tracks with AI. Then they have around their defended area, they have more layers, and so you're not spending and you're shooting those things down cheap with 50 cal bullets or whatever in the front lines, and it goes over. We don't even have that. We're shooting $100, $200, $300,000 interceptors off a radar coming in, and we can't even see under the radar.
From your perspective, who else is doing that well, addressing that gap, kind of internationally? Are there other players that are doing it, and what culturally are they doing differently
I think
than we are?
Nobody's been forced to do it except for Ukraine. So Ukraine is leading it, and the countries that are in there, we're in there, by the way. But we're not, the Baltics are ahead of us. The Baltics, because where the threat is, right? Poland, Romania. But we've seen it. And Europe's seen it. Yet nobody wanted to do it. Nobody wanted to pay for it. They thought it wasn't going to happen. So, no, Ukraine, but they're not the best. I mean, these guys are doing alpha garages. They're doing MacGyver stuff. They're not doing it the way we can do it, right? We haven't turned our industry on to doing this. They're scrapping it with all sorts of stuff.
Turn on now, I assure you. Yes, Reese. Scott.
Ricky, this administration seems to have an almost pathological hatred for Ukraine. So how do you square the White House's rather juvenile view of Ukraine with the Pentagon's deep need to adopt that technology?
I wouldn't agree with you on that, because Ukraine now, having Ukraine and Russia focused on Ukraine rather than over in Iran, I mean, there's a political chess match going on, right? That we're balancing that because we're more vulnerable now because all our force structure and stuff, you know what I'm talking about, around the world. So I wouldn't say the Ukraine thing has to come to an end, but the reason why Russia's kicking our ass over there a little bit is a war of attrition. Every war, World War I, World War II. And it's costing us way more than it is them. And they don't regard their lives that much, but the munition costs are drastically on engagement different than that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Right here.
Yeah, so the bane of everyone's existence is government contracting and how long it takes. There's been a huge shift into OTAs, which traditionally are much faster, but these OTA consortiums are now getting bogged down because the new administration is pushing toward OTAs, and it's taking like 9 to 12 months but that is still too slow based off what the Secretary of War wants. How do you see with Golden Dome and what they're trying to get after? Do you think there's going to be a shift to something different, or how are they going to shake that up? So we have capability, here you go, here's the money, let's get going.
Well, I think they're ahead of you already, right? Dale Marks, the deputy under, on the buys, the revolution has happened. This is just gonna propel the hell out of it, right? And these guys are different than the previous administration. They're actionable and they're accountable. So I think it's coming even faster. It's no doubt coming. So you're gonna see a change of speed. They gotta scale up now. They have to scale up. They got potential world war. They're running out of munitions, defensive munitions. I'm not saying offense, but defensive stuff. They have to deal with this. China's watching. You got, all that gesturing on Taiwan happening. You got a lot going on. So we're not in the 80s, we're not in the 90s, we're not where you've been the last 20 years where you can be fat and happy. We're not there. It's changed. And so we're just here right at the edge of it. So you will get revolutionary change to get that. They won't go what they've been doing. They're going to take risk. They're going to take risk on you to be able to deliver.
Ricky, what grade do you give Golden Dome for America? We're about a year into the program, and now we're 14 days into a war with Iran. But and back to the earlier question of the relationships. But what grade do you give Golden Dome for America, and what do you think needs to be done to move this out a little faster?
I think they've done tremendous. I mean, I'll give them a B on that. They have not been distracted on it. The war's going to help them on it, but their architecture is in place. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? It's a limited area. You saw it. Everybody saw what it was. It's sort of a version of that. A limited area defense where you're going to protect a couple places with I think the container, and with a container full of different types of missiles integrated with multi-sensors with command and control. This is just the terminal part of it, and then you're gonna have the underlayer, which can fit in that same container, right? And then you would have the NGIs and GBIs for the mid-course, and then you have the space-based interceptor. That's for the boost phase part of it on the way up. That's kind of basically what it is. On top of that, and so I think the weak spot still, right, is how do you protect the counter UAS? I don't think that's where I think the vulnerability. We got to now assess being able to defend that with a whole counter UAS capability around those terminal sites on it. But I think the game, we shouldn't keep our eyes, the fact that space is so, a space-based interceptor is off the charts. And we have the technology, they've got the gates, they got 3 gates. They're gonna have and prove a space-based interceptor boost phase in 3 years. That's happening. That's going through the gates, through innovation of the quickest, smartest. They're doing that. So that's an amazing capability. And then to be able to do the C2 with it, which is the hardest thing on it. So I think they're playing with what they've got. I'll give them a B.
Thank you. Well, this working group cut its teeth back many years ago, and a program. How many of you have heard the program called GPALS? Global Protection Against Limited Strikes, and we're back. We're back. SDI is back, but the what the circumstance was then is similar to what it is now. There is a groundswell of understanding and need, but keeping the political will of that. And
Joe, it's
so
there.
you can't,
You're not gonna. You're watching
now
TV.
it's there. How do we work to keep it?
We've got. I don't think it's already shifted. You're still living back in the SDI debates or the 2001 space debates. We've moved. The president's moved the executive order to fight in space. We are moved. We're not going back. And one of the bonuses of having a gag order on is you don't have all the Chinese, Russian think tank criticism of what's going on and those false arguments. There's a lot of false arguments that they were wrong. They were wrong on the need and requirement for missile defense. And we should have been way ahead of this if Reagan was allowed to put brilliant pebbles up, or you can go all the way back down to it. So I don't think that fight, there's nobody can argue against it.
Please, Rock.
Thank you. So you mentioned a little bit about the fact that it's now a classified environment, which means it really feels like if you know, you know, and that's the only way you're going to get into that community to share those great ideas. How would you recommend companies actually present and talk to the Golden Dome folks, because it is classified, et cetera? That front door, that access really seems to be a far more politically motivated than actual technology motivated. How do I give my good ideas?
I would give you another perspective. I think Mike's met with 600 companies. Okay, so if you haven't met with them, get an appointment to meet with them, right? They're willing to do that. They're open to that. The question, one of the reasons why the gag order is on, is they don't want to name these companies public, because they don't want the Chinese to buy you or to put cyber on you, all that stuff. So part of that is for your own good on that. So you just got to make the effort to go directly to him, or find that route to go to him to present and have a concept to present.
Thank you.
Good. Anyone else, please? Right over here. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure to see you, Ricky. Jeff and Gabe from England. My question, to go into culture and to go into challenge. If you were to draw in your mind a pie chart, 51-49, any ratio, what is the greater challenge for us on Golden Dome? Our external sale with our allies, or our internal sale with ourselves?
Our internal sale, but allies are going to come in because that data's there for them, right? We got that, and we're going to. But it's our internal sale because we're threatening the other services with funds, trade for funds, and they want to hook onto the Golden Dome and leverage their missile defense capabilities by leveraging the Golden Dome's budget. So that's a fight right there on top of that aspect of it.
Any final questions here, folks? We got a couple. We're gonna right here.
Brent Romine with New Systems. Hi, thanks for your advocacy, Ricky, for missile defense. I really appreciate it. You mentioned earlier the C2 consortium was being opened up to small businesses rather than the big OEMs. As a small business, we're about 300-person defense contractor. I can't find a way into the C2
That ship's
consortium.
sailed. That ship's already sailed.
Okay.
That's already sailed.
Yeah.
Because it's 28. You got to be able. I mean, they can't wait anymore. It's gone. I mean, these things are moving fast. He's got to deliver. You got to have capabilities. So you got to get in.
Yeah. So you're not.
You'll have to sub to one of those 6.
Sure.
That's
sure.
what
Yeah.
or what 5? I don't know what that 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
But again, that's just putting the tracks together. I still think the bigger stuff is the engine behind all this, right?
Yeah.
Ontology and the data being able to be processed, trillions of bits of data being processed.
We have one back here? Yes, please.
So I appreciate you talking about culture and trust. I'm going to go back to the question of communication for people coming to these events, listening to you, the August event. I appreciate linking up with 600 companies, but Mike can't meet with all of them. Can you just speak into the way these people can get the communication from the warfighter, from the industry, so that they make their investments and their plans to be part of the solution in 2028? Any other ideas?
Well, I mean, if I was a small company, I'll somehow get my product in Ukraine tested. I mean, that's like, if you can do that, awesome. Because that's what's being looked at quickly. The next thing would be going into that striker unit with those guys in the Army to be able to get your product on that thing. That's moving up. You've got to be able to have a non-paper, a real credible product. They can sniff it out, right? They've seen all these. So that's your ability. Your product has to be credible and real and doable, and they have to understand, believe it, right? That's what you pay your guys to do, I think, to do that. But there is opportunity if you can do that. If you can do cheap counter UAS right now, there's tremendous opportunity in both sensing and effectors.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks, before we wrap this up? Final comments, Ricky?
Oh, yeah. I've been coming here. I've been telling you what's going to happen. You got to take advantage of it, or you sit back and it's just going to pass you, right? Life's about seizing opportunities and having the courage to do it, to break your norms that you normally do, to be in that culture. You want to be in this culture. You're at the right place at the right time. You got to get in that culture. That's how you win. You get in that group to go, and you need to form that. And your voices are important to be heard. That what's blocking you? Why can't you execute your program? What is blocking you from doing what you can do? That's what they want to know. So I'm just giving you intel, guys. I'm just giving you an independent intel of what's going on. It's up to you to make the assessment, to have the courage, to have the grit, and to manifest your pod into the system. You can do it. You're smart. You've got it. I'm excited because I think they're going to give a lot to you. And they're going to take a shot at small, innovative companies. You got a shot that you've never had before, ever. So, yeah, thank you, Joe. This has been great. I've enjoyed it. We started with maybe 10 people with Larry Dodgen way back 20, 30 years ago. But it's good. And you're just getting one perspective. I'm just one guy on this stuff.
You're well read, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I've got a new name for Ricky. Go ahead, and that's
yeah. No, but I've been part of one inch cultures. It's all about being invincible. When you believe you're invincible. And the only way you can get to that is through resilience and failure. Fast to fail, but it's all about trust. It's all about trust. You gotta be very careful on what you promise and what you don't, and live up to that. Because trust is the equalizer, and that brings invincibility from the diversity of all of you. If you sell something or sell something that's not true, you lose trust, and then you are shifted out. You're out. You're ghosted. So you gotta create that environment. That's the culture we're trying to create, and get a couple champions, a lot of you, to be able to come up with some solutions that can scale up, that can be proven, demonstrated. And I know you're stuck with the processes right now. That whole Death Valley stuff. That's not the way to go.
Ricky, you've become, whether you recognize it or not, our coach, our head coach for missile defense. And so we're very grateful for your advocacy and you coalesce the message beautifully for motivating this industry in this country to what we do is in large measure because of you across this country relative to missile defense. We're very grateful. Thanks for being with us. Let's give Ricky one round of applause.